You gotta watch what you're doing. Yeah. You gotta watch what you're doing.
Schizophrenia is usually a chronic, often lifetime condition, and cannabis users increase their chances of developing this condition by 2 or 3 times. They've taken scans of the brain, and similar damage has been seen in the brains of adolescent daily cannabis users and adolescent non-using schizophrenic. Damage is in the same area. Schizophrenics also have an excess of dopamine in the brain. A New Zealand study found that young male users were nearly 5 times more violent than non-users. The risk of alcohol at 3 times, surprisingly, was lower. Violence is thought to be associated with the psychotic incidents or during withdrawal. And a Swedish study found more suicides amongst cannabis users than those who used amphetamines, alcohol or heroin. The cannabis one is the first one, and you'll see it's the shaded in block. That's the suicides. The manner of death was more violent. Only cannabis users jumped from high buildings. So much for the peaceful, stoned image of pot smokers. Less dramatic, but harming more young people, are the effects on personality and academic performance. Now this is, you'll say, why on earth has she got not a 2-year-old child's brain on there? But I couldn't get diagrams of teenagers. From birth to 2, you can see that the network of nerve cells in the brain grows and develops, and you get this terrific, elaborate network. Now, the same sort of burst of connections takes place around adolescence. Because the THC stays so long in the brain cells, it interferes with all the neurotransmitters, as I've said before, and new connections are made in the learning and memory processes. Now, as I've said, in adolescence you get a spurt of these new nerve branches. THC impairs this. Just 1 joint a week, or even once a month, will ensure a permanent presence of the drug. Children's brains are undeveloped. They will not be fully mature until they're in their 20s. The younger a person starts using cannabis, the worse the damage. They are more likely to become addicted, suffer mental illness, or move on to other drugs. And there's also a huge question mark over permanent brain damage. Some researchers say it does, some don't, but it's still a question mark. School grades fall. A's and B's become C's and D's. An average grade D student is 4 times more likely to have used cannabis than an average grade A. Some miss out on university places. I know, I've seen it happen. A cannabis personality develops, users become inflexible, have fixed opinions and fixed answers to questions. They find it difficult to express themselves, they can't take criticism, it's always somebody else's fault, and can't plan their day. They and their families suffer from violent mood swings. It's almost impossible to talk to them. And at the same time, they're lonely, miserable, and feel misunderstood. Few children using cannabis, even occasionally, will achieve their full academic potential. It's an intoxicant, like alcohol, so people shouldn't be driving. They put some pilots on flight simulators, and even 24 hours and even up to 50 hours later, you'll see they were making mistakes. That's the dotted line. The solid line is the control set. So it took a long, long time for the effects to wear off. Someone having a joint today shouldn't be driving tomorrow. And combining alcohol and cannabis is 16 times more dangerous than using either drug alone. Cannabis smoke contains more of some of the carcinogens than tobacco does, so it's not surprising that cancers occur. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten to go on to the next one. I've dotted the 2 compounds at the bottom. These are carcinogens, and you'll see that there are more in the cannabis smoke than the tobacco smoke. Cannabis smoke is inhaled deeper, held in the lungs for longer, and usually smoked right down to the butt. About 3 or 4 times as much tar is deposited in the airways. Some researchers estimate one joint in cancer terms equals 4 or 5 cigarettes. Not only have lung cancers been reported, but rare head and neck cancers in young people previously seen only in the over 60s in tobacco users. And very recently, just in the last few weeks, an increased risk of testicle cancer in young men has been found. Bronchitis and emphysema can result, and also a condition called bullous lung disease, which destroys young lung tissue. Great holes appear. This occurs about 20 years earlier than it does in tobacco smokers, and it's often not detected in X-rays. THC has been found to damage the DNA of new cells being made in an adult body. I'm sure you know what DNA is now. It's in the nucleus. And it has to be copied absolutely precisely from cell to cell. Now, cells have a lifespan, and the THC speeds up what's called apoptosis, or programmed cell death. In other words, they will live for a certain amount of time. THC speeds that up. And it's white cells which are constantly being produced in the body, amongst others. Fewer will be made, some will be abnormal. Our protection against infection is impaired. People will be more vulnerable to disease. Their illness will be worse and will last longer. Sperm cells are constantly made in the male body. And again, THC shortens their lifespan. Infertility and even impotence have been reported among young men. Many are turning to Viagra for help. In women, a low level of anandamide, remember that's the neurotransmitter that the THC replaces, in the uterus allows the egg to implant itself. In other words, there's a low level of anandamide in the uterus and the egg comes down and is implanted. A rush of THC, of course, would prevent this. And reports of miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies emerged in 2006. The birth weight of babies born to cannabis-using mothers is lower, and they have problems with behaviour, brain function, particularly problem-solving, learning, memory and planning as they grow up. They are more likely to develop one of the commonest childhood cancers, neuroblastoma, or one form of leukemia, and to use cannabis themselves at adolescence. And they often have mild symptoms of withdrawal when they're born. There is a rise in blood pressure and heart rate to the level of real stress. Heart attacks and strokes have been recorded. Two people say, oh, it doesn't cause death instantly. 2 teenagers had strokes and died after binging on cannabis. Another one was left paralysed.
You know you're never getting